Good morning, Terry. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you?
Oh, looks like I've got a little problem on my big machine. I guess I got to update my big machine.
The Zoom.
Yeah. I moved computers right off the bat.
I don't think it takes very long to update.
Now it jumps right quick. Just that I turned it on right after that meeting. It was like, oh, don't tell me this is happening now. So I went to my phone. How you been?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Getting ready to go down up and see the grandkids up in DC.
Oh, great. You going this weekend?
Yeah, leaving tomorrow. Dark 30. Gonna be working from up there for maybe at least a week, if not two.
Good. That's the nice thing about working virtually.
Oh yeah. It's definitely great. Yeah, I just hope I'm bringing everything I own as far as electronics are concerned.
Yeah.
Hey, Christine, Wayne.
Hey.
There's me and me. All right, I'm getting off this.
Greg, I made it. It's
Hey,
it was that guy's fault.
We appreciate that. I gotta throw this guy out there. I gotta throw this other guy out.
Greg, you've got a reverb going on. Does
know.
anyone else hear that?
I do.
I got two systems open.
Okay.
Mute one.
I'm getting at him.
An echo. Six. Good. All right. Can anybody hear me? Greg, are you on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Big audio issues. Yeah, I got you, Greg.
All right, brother.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing well.
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Greg made me cancel my boat trip today, but I'm excited to be here.
Weather's not that great for it.
We are going to be recording this, and I'm going to stop. All right. Welcome to episode 4, I think, of our interview series with interviewing successful solo agents. Today we have Kyle Walker, and Kyle has been an agent for how long, Kyle?
Full-time 2014.
2014. So in that short period of time, Kyle has made a name for himself, a good name. Okay. He has. I find Kyle back before he was 40, and actually belonged to the young, whatever they call you people. And Kyle's taken a lot of training. He's closed a lot of sales. Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Perfect. So try to keep it under a minute. So I'm very learning based, big time. That's one of the big reasons I chose KW was for the training and learning. My background was in education, finished college and traveled, so never taught. So, but it's part of just my blood, right? So just learning all the time as much as I can. That's part of the growth. I come from the hospitality business in Charleston since 2002. Ran and operated some restaurants, bars, and then found real estate as the converter for career. It just made sense. There was a lot of alignment there for me. So 2014 jumped full in leaving the hospitality business. And I've done some great things with KW. I was honored to be on the ALC committee in the Mount Pleasant office. I helped co-found the Keller Williams Young Professionals that got started in the Charleston area. which was also a neat venture that's still going on. Yeah, just a couple of those things. 8-time Bowl grad. I've done quite a few different coachings. I'm also still licensed up where I just came back to Charleston from the Midwest. I went up there for an opportunity. I'm still company training with an independent brokerage up there on a small scale. So just jumping back into things here in Charleston.
So you're just jumping back into Charleston, you're jumping back in as a solo agent, correct?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more. I want to focus the interview more on how do we take a buyer, right? You got the lead. Let's not go into how we got the lead, but we have a buyer lead. And how do we take that buyer through the system, your system, one that you find works? And that's what we're here to understand. What do you find works? And let's start with, okay, you've got a buyer lead. You've converted the buyer lead. Okay, what's the next step?
Perfect. So I'll start by saying I learned the hard way by not staying committed to, so the first step is consultation, setting up a consultation, meeting with them, exploring what they're looking for, making sure that you're in alignment and just going through the process. And I learned the hard way. I didn't do it for a close friend, and I lost the opportunity in business because I didn't take the consultation. I just assumed that they were going to want to work with me. So
Dig into that a little bit. Dig into that a little bit. Dig into the assumption. That's important to know.
the assumption is oh, they're a close friend.
Tell us the story. Tell us the story.
Yeah, they're going to work with me no matter what because we're close friends. They trust me, right? I didn't set expectations. We met, and what we did, we just ended up talking about old stories, fun stuff, and I never addressed the business side. I never addressed the process. And when it came down to it, and there was no friendship lost by it, thank goodness, but it was my lack of presenting what it was going to look like for him on the other side when he had somebody else who was also a friend as well that presented what the situation was going to look like in the process, because it's about business at the end of the day. Yes, it's the relationship, but I learned then that I had to put together a system and a process and stick to it for every single person, whether it was a friend or whether it was a cold lead that came in or referral. Stick with the same process every time and treat every client like they're the client. Yes, it makes it easier when they're their friend. However, you can still be misguided in those conversations when you're having with them, just because you're assuming that they're going to understand and that you're on the same page.
So every person that you talk to that is going to be a client of yours is getting sat down, whether listening or buying, and you're having a conversation with them, a professional business conversation.
Yep. I've got a presentation that I use and the process I use that from start to finish. And it's a lengthy consultation. So yeah, so Greg, you were asking, so after the appointment set, the consultations, what I call it, it's meeting in person or Zoom. I've been using Zoom for about 3.5 years. I've started recognizing I had a lot of out of state buyers coming in, and I wanted to hit the ground running as soon as they came in because the market, well, why not establish the rapport right away, meet face to face, start these Zoom conversations. So I've been utilizing Zoom for quite a while to build that expectations and the rapport and go through the process in the beginning. That way, once they got into town, again, we can just hit the ground running and there's no meet and greets and learning each other from there. My consultations are 2 hours long. I know everybody.
Can I ask one question before we get into that?
Yep.
How do you bring them into the Zoom?
Or clarify that. What do you mean by how do you bring them in?
You say you start that relationship face to face on a Zoom.
Yep.
So you get the lead in or you get the person in. Is it, hey, you can walk me through how you get to them on a Zoom back and forth before you get into your consultation?
Yep. So I treat that just like setting an appointment. That is the consultation on that side. So it's using your tie downs, whatever closing techniques that you have, but it's setting an appointment and it's setting an expectation is we're going to treat the Zoom just like if we were sitting here at the conference table or at the Starbucks, whatever it looks like. Because what I want to do is show you what our market's doing down here compared to where you're at and how our process works and how our contracts work.
So the appointment is the Zoom meeting.
Correct. Yep.
We check that off. You got an appointment. Click.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's good. And yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So my consultations are 2 hours long, hour and a half to 2 hours, which seems really excessive, I think, for a lot of people, and it might be. However, I feel like building the rapport, setting the expectations, going what I call 3 layers deep on every question they have or every opportunity, or like Greg and I just did, clarifying on what you mean by that, instead of, again, going back to the assumptions. So my consultation is going to involve a lot of getting to know each other at the beginning, learning about them, picking up on what they're doing, and also sharing about who I am after they get finished. So I'm Kyle. This is my background. This is who I am. This is why I'm in the business. This is the company I know, love, and work for right now, or work with right now. We'll go over on the initial setting up the appointment. And if I'm skipping through stuff, to stop me and ask any questions.
Oh, I will, believe me.
I fill out a lead form as I'm asking questions, as I'm setting the appointment. So I'm not trying to memorize everything. So I've got a whole couple sheets of documents, or a couple documents that I'm filling out, taking notes, what they're looking for, who their family is, who all the decision makers are in the family, what area, what schools, every possible detail. That way, getting to the appointment, I can be better prepared for that appointment. I can be better prepared for the schools, who they need to contact. I can be better prepared for their area, the stats, market analysis. So I'm doing research on the front end to be even more in depth and prepared and professional. I think professional is always it's always the big word by the time the appointment comes. So the first 10, 15 minutes is rapport building. That's the biggest, for me, I think that's my biggest strength going into any appointment, is building rapport, and learning more about them and empathizing with them and sharing with them. So if it takes longer than 15 minutes, side note, take the DISC course that's coming up next week. You'll if you haven't or aren't familiar with it, you'll understand what I'm saying once you do, because there's certain personalities in that DISC that you might need to build more rapport with, because they need a little bit more trust building with it.
Give us a little quick, what is your DISC profile real quickly?
Natural state, I'm a high I all the time. Going into real estate 2014, I was IS, so I was stronger on the S side by nature. And I think a lot of that has to do with hospitality business, because you're serving. Yes is always the answer there, right? Coming into real estate and through all the education through here, so halfway through into career in real estate, it quickly switched to high DI. But I is always the constant, but the D switch, because I learned I have to take control of my business as opposed to hospitality business. It's different. So
There was a switch from a yes person over to a purposeful person.
correct.
And that's where your D rose.
Yeah.
D, for those people who don't know, D is a dominant, driving force. So go ahead, finish up. I apologize.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So to what Greg and I are saying, so with that, there's certain personalities in there that might need a little bit more of that rapport. And that's where I got my strength, because you're building the trust. Once you can gain the trust of what your product is, once you can gain the trust of who your company is, who your organization is, that's when you know it's going to be a good situation and a win-win on the advice that you give. So awesome, that consultation. I jotted down some notes earlier.
Can I ask a quick question before you move on?
Yeah.
So regarding the lead form that you fill out as you're conversing with the leads,
Yeah.
do you preface it by saying something along the lines of, do you mind if I ask you a series of questions, or do you make it more conversational and the lead form is the conversation? How do you do that?
So I utilize both. So depending on what type of lead that's coming in, and I don't, for time's sake, don't want, if it's a friend, if it's a cold, something like that. But yes, I will ask, because I want them to also recognize that I'm taking the notes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Might not have identified their personality yet, but if there's somebody of the similar personality that needs to take notes and like notes, they want to know that you're taking notes, because I want to make sure I've got everything correct on what you're telling me right now. I think the client appreciates that when you have it written down, but I do that. And if they give an answer because they're simple questions, if they give an answer, if I need more clarity on it, I'll dig what we call 3 layers deep, just to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly and not assuming that I'm hearing you correctly. So it's a combination of both. Absolutely. Once I know the appointment's set, I set the appointment first. It's not
Okay.
filling out all the stuff. The appointment's set. We're going to meet. Okay, perfect. Now that that's set, do you have just an extra minute where I can go through some questions to make sure I'm fully prepared for our consultation come next week?
Okay,
So,
perfect.
yep,
Thank
it's a
you.
combination of both, of course. And so the consultation, it's going to look like the rapport. It's going to look like, I'm going to talk about the market, because that's usually what they're there for. They want to hear about the market. They want to hear about the houses. They want to hear about all that stuff. That's the exciting part. So market monitor, that's in, and I don't know the level of years that y'all are in it, but market monitors through CTAR that you can get. That's going to be your stats for the neighborhood that they're looking. So a lot of people, I'm a visual learner. That's also how typically I've got whiteboard. That's how I teach as well. So for me, visually is good. So it's showing the graphs of the neighborhood, because what you're doing in those consultations is you're educating them. We're the professionals, because what they're hearing is everything through Zillow. What they're hearing is everything on the news or the Post and Courier. Every August, the market's shifting every August, according to Post and Courier, which isn't true. But so we're the professionals. So going back to it, so it's our job to show them what the market is, because what you're now doing is setting the expectation for the buyers. Again, everything I've learned is through Relatable. I learned a lesson at the beginning of, you just don't hop in the car and just go show houses and show, not setting expectations. So what you're doing with these expectations, you're showing them how long the house is going to be on the market according to the stats. You're going to show them how many showings it takes to the opinion. So you're really to put them in the shoes on, you've got to make a quick decision. And it's our job to put them into the position that they can make a comfortable, quick decision on that side. So
What
it's
you're
market
saying-
monitors.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So what you're saying is become the expert in your market, become the expert, dig deep into and research where they're going to be after you do your initial rapport building.
Yeah. So depending how detailed it can get or how broad it is, more detailed the better. But I'll have that templated and prepared as well, because in that consultation you might learn even more. But at least you have the template as far as houses to see. But the market monitor is set. Like I'll do the MLS graph bar. I'll do subdivision, and then maybe area, just depending on what it is they're looking for. But so they can see, okay, this is really serious. Like we can't go see 20 houses. It's going to be a lot quicker than that for the houses on the market.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I talk about the process. If they're a first-time home buyer, or if they haven't bought in for a long time, things change. Contracts change. The process changes. They could have bought 30 years ago. Well, it looks a lot different now. Or from a different state, it looks a lot different now. So I'll gauge how they are, again, dependent on their personality, but usually they don't mind if you're hitting the topics, just going through. This is our step-by-step. Again, it's in the presentation. So I talk about the standard process of what it's going to look like. This is how we operate. So again, it's setting, this is how I do business. And you're making sure that that they're aligned with you on how I do business.
So, and just so we don't get bogged down into it, because I know you can do every detail. Once you get that all together, your biggest expectation telling us a buyer before you go out, because we want to get to what happens once we get them.
Gotcha.
What are the 6 things? Do you have 6 things that you can plow through in a few minutes?
Oh, the consultation
Questions
side, or
they
what?
might ask, or-
You talking about the consultation side, or once you get into?
Yeah, I mean, the consultation side, 3 things.
Yeah. So I'll buzz through some buzzwords that I've got written down here, and if you guys need clarity later on it, I'm more than happy to field a call or email, whatever that looks like. So it's the market monitor, potential homes, my process, expectations on where it's a win-win for both sides, and then in there as well too, I'm also going over agency agreement. I don't show properties without an agency agreement in place, unless it's one property. Say if it's an open house sign, or Zillow, if you use Zillow, sure, I'll go show one house. But, yeah, but I'm going to line up and make sure that we're seeing 2 or 3 houses. It's not going to be just one. Perfect. So I'm going to line up 3 houses in that neighborhood. Let's go see them, and I'm going to put them in an order to make sure that the first house isn't the house that they're calling on. But at that first house, I'm going to talk about buyer agency. and I'm gonna set that expectation ahead of time. We're gonna walk through the buyer agency, so legally you know what's right and what's wrong, right? A lot of times agents aren't doing that with it, so I set that expectation up front. So if I'm showing properties, 100%, I won't show a property without an agency agreement.
Cool. Now, and I want to go back to that. You know, if you're going to take somebody out for one property, you might as well take them out for three. You agree, right?
Yep.
And the strategy there is what?
It's to show them the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Do you show
Yeah.
your good, bad, or the ugly first?
I know there's some different orders, but it's always good last.
Good, bad. Okay. And okay, so you got your market monitor, you're setting your expectations, you got your agency agreement, and I think that's a big trip up for a lot of agents in the going out there, and they're kind of hesitant to say, hey, if you don't work with me, if you don't sign this agreement, I'm not working with you. Could you give us some clarity around that? What do you say? How do you bring them in? How do you present it?
Yeah, so I present it like, I mean, I always, like, I think everybody uses, like, there's certain quips on things, but mine, it's like attorney-client privilege. And I go through quickly, if it can be quickly with them, and just talk about how it relates to them and the professional side and what they share. And let them know, because technically I'm representing the seller if I open the door and show somebody the property without an agency agreement in place. And if I was to disclose any kind of information that's pertinent, that might not reflect well to the seller, because that would be my agency agreement to the buyer would be to show that. But if I don't have that agency agreement, technically I'm representing the seller and I can't disclose that. So therefore I'm not helping the buyer at that point. And if I do disclose it and I get caught on tape or video, which is happening these days,
Like common nowadays.
yeah, I can be held liable, because technically I'm representing the seller by just opening the door.
So if you're like me, you don't work with anybody that is not under an agency agreement, because 100% of my clients have an agency agreement with me.
As far as showing properties, yeah, and spending time on, correct, yeah. I mean, but I'll set them up on houses and stuff like that. It's not black and white there, but once it comes time, like, everything's in place. It's the pre-qualification letter. It's the commitment to our company, Keller Williams, and that's what it is. It's a commitment to Keller Williams, and I'm the mediator in there.
So give me some conversation. So you've got it set up. You set the expectation that you're going to go out there and see 3 to 5 properties. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. How do we get them through I want to see everything down to 3 to 5? Give me a snapshot of that.
Sure. So I'll go back to the market monitor there and talk about the houses. But say if it's a house list of 10 here. All right. Well, let's break down I set the expectation up front. Like, here's where it is. Here's time frame every day, because you need X amount of time to schedule out. You talk about how much time that you put into setting up all these appointments, getting the details, getting the documents. It's not as easy as just flip the switch. Well, it can be that easy, but then we're not doing our job, right? So I explain on what I'm doing to set everything up, and also explaining to them 9 out of 10 people are getting exhausted after the 4th or 5th showing, because houses start running in together. They start getting confused with each other. So this is what I'm going to do, buyer. Here's 15 listings. I've got all the photos for you. We can go through them together, or you can take them home and you and your partner this evening can review these. But what we're going to do is we're going to see your top 5, because I'm going to do a research analysis on your top 5 going into these houses as opposed to 15. And we're going to look at your top 5, because those are the ones that you want to see. Your number 15 isn't going to compare to your number 1. It's just not going to. Would you agree?
I would.
Yeah. So let's do the right thing. Let's just do the 5. You select the 5, and we'll get them lined up and scheduled, and then I'll start doing my homework research for them right away. I can't imagine. I've done it before. I've shown 15 plus in a day.
You forget them after 5. They get tired. You get tired. There's too many questions. No matter how many notes you take. Was that the Blue House? Was that the White House? Cool. Yep. So I think a lot of people stumble, and thank you for that. A lot of people stumble once we get into those 3 to 5 houses. So would you take me and us once we get to the house,
Yep.
I want to hear conversations, closing comments. How do you take these people that are out here? They're out here. How do you bring them down and funnel them into, hey, we just spent 4 hours on the road. This is the house that works for you.
Yep.
How do you do that? Give me a quick.
So that is, so I'll go into it. That is a piece of my consultation, the 2 hour long. I'm setting the standard up. So they know when we get to the first house, this is what it's going to look like, right? So the first house, we get out of the cars, and I always drive separate. I'm the worst driver, and I'm a high eye, so I'm always talking. So we're never in the car together unless there's a certain reason, right? But it's awful. Like I'll run the red, I'll run the stoplight if I'm trying to show. It's crazy. But we get to the house, we get out of the car. What we're going to do first is we're going to look on the outside of the house. We're going to get out. I've got a buyer packet that every time we go on these showings, we'll just call them 5 every time. So it's a buyer packet. It's got all the houses. It's got all the pertinent documentation. Because again, some personalities like the notes. Some personalities like to flip through the book, that kind of stuff to see it. So it's a packet every time. So it's got all the right documentation. It's got photos that they can make notes on. And I've also got a review sheet that's in there too for each house.
From you.
A review from me
Your
and for
review.
them too.
Okay,
It's for
your
both.
review.
Yep. So they're circling certain numbers, right, 1 through 10, on different parts of the process for each house. So we can go back and reflect on why they're rated certain numbers, and I'll get into why at the end. So we're seeing the outside of the house. How do we feel? What does the landscape look like? What does the yard size look like? How do you like the elevation? Does the roof line look okay? Like I'm always looking for the stuff that'll come up in inspection reports. I like to work backwards on that way.
Same
It's
here.
hard for me to get to the ooh la la's because that's not my selling technique, right? So we're getting to the outside of the home. So we're looking at it because it could be they might not like it right away. You go into a neighborhood, they see the front of the house right away. Their gut is saying absolutely not, no way. This color looks different. This looks different. Can't put the boat here. Perfect. Let's go to the next house. So at that point, why would you not? As opposed to, which I've heard before, let's just take a look anyways, just in case. And then I'll go back and question, not in a bad way, because I've already gotten their permission through consultation. Like, well, we can go on to the next one. We already know here you can't fit your boat, this, that, going into it. So it's the outside of the home, right? And so we're taking notes on that. We're getting some feedback there, meaning we as agents. Then we go inside the home. A lot of times what I'll do, like I know the important spaces that they need in the house. So whether it's got to be a big living room where the kitchen has to flow in the living room, no matter what, non-negotiable. That's going to be the first place that I'm going to go to right away. First, I'm going in there. Let's go look at this. Then a lot of times it could be master bedroom closet's got to fit enough for the shoes, whatever that looks like, in the bathroom. So I'm hitting the places that are absolute must for them that I learned through the lead form and through the consultation. And if they're not there right away, I ask them the question. We can still look through the house, but without these items here, do you want to go ahead and go on to the next house since we know these aren't hitting your absolute must items? Because in their head, they might not be saying it out loud. They might be thinking, oh, well, he put all this time into it, so we should probably just keep on looking. I don't want to hurt his feelings. Again, going back to the disc personality, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I'm a high ID. Like I'm ready to move on to the next as soon as we get out of the car, on that side. So you're setting those expectations going through. You're going to be constantly asking them questions. How do you feel about this kitchen? How do you feel about this flow? How do you feel about the color, the flooring, everything. Keep on asking questions. That's what they want. They know you're listening, and take notes while you're doing it. So we're doing everything in the house. We're not talking about the deal, not negotiating the house, if they love it, if they hate it, anything like that. Again, audio, video, all that stuff. Then we're getting to the backyard. Anything that they need in the house, I'm asking questions for. And we're looking at everything. At the end of the showing, after we go through, outside on the front porch or by the cars, we're going to do a quick analysis of the house. Where do you rate it? Where do you rate it 1 to 10? Right. So they know the form's there. So they're thinking about it. So now they have to put a number on it. It's not I like or I don't like. That's just not enough. So if it's a 7, perfect. My next question is, what would make it a 10? And if it's like, oh, well, the paint the paint color was not our paint color. Like it was just absolutely, and then the carpet in that bedroom was awful. Perfect. So if you're able to get a paint allowance and change the flooring in that one room, would you rate it a 10? So those were the two things. So it's our job to be, again, going back to professionalism and figuring out what it is. Those are easy solutions, right? So if they're saying, and they say, yes, that would make it a 10, perfect. Do you feel like you're ready to start some paperwork and write an offer to make sure that nobody comes in behind us to put an offer in? You know what? And I tell them also in consultation, y'all, that once they're at an 8, maybe a 7, but once they're at an 8, it's time to consider an offer. If you're saying an 8, you got to start thinking about it, because the difference between an 8 and a 10 is probably some small things. And then you really start talking about the perfect house, and then the perfect house is when you build, and then it's on the perfect lot. You know, like you can go down a rabbit hole with it. So I set that up front. So if it's an 8 or 10, like this is something that we want to think about writing an offer on, right? And if it's below that 8, then let's see what we can do to fix, if it's fixable, right? You can't change the floor plan usually, you know, you can't change the structure usually, but the small things you can change. Or if it's price, you can change.
Can I point out one thing?
Yeah.
And I think you do this you ask them that question every house, don't you?
Every house.
You ask them that same question every house. What can you do to make it a 10? If it is a 10, if we can have that, if that could happen, would you consider putting in an offer? You ask that question every house?
Every time, especially if it's something that, yes. And the reason for it is to hindsight on the back. Well, it's clarity of the moment. And then hindsight too, if you don't find that house in the first 5 and they send you 6 through 10, and 2 of those items are without frog, and when those were the frogs, like, no, guys, these weren't solvable in the last run. Like, let's go ahead and, you know, wouldn't you agree that we should take these out because it didn't work for you the first 5? So it doesn't make sense to go see these, right? Yeah.
So it's very, very purposeful what you do. It's not, oh, Shangri-La, here we are. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that this? You're very purposeful. You stay on track. You stay on the scent. I can't say stay on the scent, but you stay, this is my job. You're doing your job.
I'm just taking what they've told me, you know, and that's my job. You know, what they've told me, we've gone layers deep and clarity is there, then it's my job to keep them on track. I mean, it's just straight line, straight line selling, straight line, however you look at it, but it's keeping them between the lines.
So where do we go from there? You got 4 houses down, you got 5 houses down. At the end of the day, you have no decision. And possibly because I would think personally, the question, if you have no decision by house number 5 at the end of the day,
Yep.
the questions weren't right, or the questions you asked originally weren't right. They weren't truthful of what they wanted, or you lost their motivation somewhere. What do you think about that?
Yeah, if all of them were low on the chart in the rankings, yes, I didn't do my job somewhere along the line. By asking deep enough questions on what they're looking for and what the needs analysis and the consultation was. So I set it up. I don't do it after 5. I do it after 10 showings, but I set the expectation up front. There's 10 showings and we're not really close on making an offer on a home. I want to get back together and for 15 minutes, just go over exactly again what we're looking for and what we didn't see and what we want to see, to make sure that we're still aligned, still on the same page, and the trust is still there that we got the agency agreement with. So that's after 10 showings for me. We do a quick reval on what we're looking for in the search to make sure that we're on the same page with it. And it keeps them in the moment. Just like, so part of that too, Greg, is after the 5th house. Okay, so we're not writing an offer. It's absolutely no matter what, not thinking about it, not anything else. Okay, perfect. No houses we saw today. It's the end of the day. Today's Thursday. So let's go ahead and set up the next day that you guys are available to go see properties. So you're already setting that expectation now, end of Thursday. Their next availability is on Sunday. So now I've got 24 hours. Let's go ahead and set up the next one. Don't leave them hanging. Don't say, okay, well, I'll search for more houses, or send me more houses the next time one pops up, because you want to keep them in the moment, right? You don't want them to go off and not thinking about, oh, we see a house on the first 5, so there might not be one, right? You got to stay with it. Perfect. It's on the next appointment. So no matter what, you're following up, setting that next appointment ASAP right away, whether it's a call, appointment, date, so on and so forth.
Cool. So you get, I guess my question comes down to, I'm a big fan of going, okay, between house number 1 and house number 2,
Mm-hmm.
how do you rate the houses? is number one, number two, it's the old take two pieces of paper. We all have a different system. As long as you're doing something purposeful, it's going to work. So I take, here's house number one, here's house number two. What do you think? Which one's better? Which one would you buy? And they'd say, well, number one doesn't compare to number two. So we're not going to buy number one. We're going to throw that away.
Yep.
So that's the way I take them out of even worrying about number one. Do you do any kind of elimination of houses as you go up the ladder?
Yeah, I mean, if they're ranked so low and it's just absolutely no question, sure. Like, and literally, I'm visually doing it.
Crumbling the paper.
I tell them in the consultation, like, I'll do it on my sheet that I'm taking my notes on. I'll crumble it up, literally, and toss it. So it's also a visual thing. Perfect. It's out of sight, out of mind. So it's the next one. Sometimes it could come down to two, right? So like what you're saying, Greg, here's A, here's B. We can do that on site, and I can dig further into the details. We're perfect. Let's reconvene tonight at 7 o'clock if that works for you two, and we'll go over the plus and minuses for each property, and I'll go deeper into taxes or whatever the other questions are that they need to evaluate the two properties on. I'm still setting the expectation, but by the end of the business day, we're going to discuss these items and any questions that I can dig deeper on that I might not have answered.
What's the biggest challenge you face dealing, working with buyers? What's your biggest challenge?
I think initially that's funny. So different stages in career. At the beginning, I wasn't qualifying them enough. So that was on me. So I think the challenges initially were me with it. And I know that's not the question you're asking. However, now I know my time and the value for it. And I think a lot of times the first is the pre-qualification letter. A lot of buyers will tell you that they're qualified, right? Whether they make X amount of dollars, this, that, the other. Again, I've learned through circumstances and through a close friend at the beginning, that's not always the case. Even if you're off 25,000 on the houses you're looking for, I think a lot of people either think they can afford more, and a lot of people think they can afford less because they don't realize. So I think that's the number one thing with buyers is on both of their own mindset, because they haven't taken the time to talk to a lender yet on that side. And then I don't think there's a lot of them that don't want to see every house on the market. There are those that are out there, but those can be challenging on just really explaining in depth on why that might not be the best avenue to go. And I think we're losing our professionalism sometimes if we're showing them all those houses without expectations on anything and what the market is.
Without actually calling them out on it and saying, wait a sec, you told me last week that's not what you wanted. Whether it was a dark kitchen, whether it was a carpeted floor, 2-story, master up, master down.
Yep.
I think I agree with you 100% on that. You do have to stay and call them out on it and remind them that that's not what you were looking for.
Greg, I bring that again. The consultation I do, I talk about all these things. I let them know, hey, are you okay with me being totally transparent?
Yep.
If you ask me about something, I'm not going to tell you my thoughts because you might love the kitchen and I might not like it. Right? It's not my job. If you ask for my opinion, I'm going to share an opinion. However, it's my job to give you the facts and expectations and show you what the market is. So to go back to it, like it's part of that consultation and just being fully transparent, getting them comfortable with you, letting them know like, hey, remember we met, you told me to remind you, or you told me to keep you on track with this. Like, here's where we're at. Like, it's just part of it. And it's part of our job. I mean, what do they say, Greg, with the doctor? There's a line about the doctor and his professionalism. Going into it, you don't question a doctor or their time or the scheduling an appointment, so on and so forth.
Right.
Same with our profession. We got to treat ourselves the same way too. You're setting the appointment, you're giving the best advice, and all that, and you want to hear from your doctor the truth.
Right.
You want to hear, oh, you're going to be okay.
And that's the line I use. I use a line, the statement I use to them is, how honest do you want me to be with you when we're looking for houses? And I want you to be 100% honest. So when I do have to have that difficult conversation, remember you told me you wanted me to 100% honest? Well, here's a fierce conversation. Let's
Yep.
sit down and talk. You're going off the deep end. You're looking at the houses are too much money, whatever the situation is.
Yep.
So we do have to be honest with them, and we have to be direct right back to them in a caring, concerned manner. Do it through, interpersonal communication.
Ask their permission to do it. Ask their
Yeah.
permission to be honest.
That's a great
You
way.
might. Again, that's another trust builder. But if you're asking their permission, they're not going to say. I've never had anybody say no. No, Kyle, I don't want you to tell me the truth. But now we're on the same page, and now I can't be offensive, because it might project as being offensive if you don't get permission.
I had one woman tell me, well, you can be 100% as long as you don't tell me I look like crap in the morning. Okay, that's fine. That's what she said.
Yeah.
Anybody and Kyle, let me ask you a question, because we're coming up on 45 minutes, and I appreciate it was a quick 45 minutes. And I know that I've had many conversations with Kyle over the years. He's one of my favorite people. What Kyle does, and I want to take this back to 6 personal perspectives, if I could. It's E to P. It's entrepreneurial to purposeful. You sit down, you have the conversation with the client, with the prospect, you find out their needs and wants, you have it on paper. It makes the whole deal go so much smoother. You agree, Kyle?
Yeah. The extra hour, because everybody always says hour consultation, which is fine. Everybody's different. But the reason for my length, that 1 extra hour to me to go over, I've got sheets and sheets. I'll go down a rabbit hole with it. But that extra hour gives me so much time on the back end. It gets me so many less, right now, I think so 2019 average, it was at 4.2 houses shown per contract writing. Again, I track all that stuff, but it's because of that 1 extra hour. Just saves me so much time not getting back in the car and showing multiple homes and the pre-qualification. Just the whole process. 1 hour makes me so many hours on the back end behind it, and it's just worth it.
Let's get just a short 5-minute segment, and then we'll go into a question and answer period. Closing questions. Do you actually think about a closing question as you're walking through houses? Or is it just such a natural progression of question, answer, close?
Yep. I think it's more the latter for me. On that side, I think it's through that many questions. I think for me, what I found with all those questions, and by the end of it, I call it, 6 yeses, 7 yeses, whatever it is, right? Whatever the number is on. And if they're saying 6 or 7 times, yes, about the house, yes, I like this, yes, I like this. If they change this, which is easy, or if I change, that's a yes, right? 6 or 7 of those, I'm starting to understand that this is a good house. So it's a lot easier for me to gauge and get to a close at the end when we're leaving by them saying yes. I'm listening to them. I'm not closing them. They're answering my questions. Like they're given the answer. They're closing themselves on that side. And if I'm asking the right questions and going deep enough on them, literally a lot of times, I'm telling them in the house, like, let's don't talk about this and don't talk about the offer inside the house. Like let's step outside because because everybody wants to, let's write an offer right now. For me, it happens organically more so, I think, with it than it does me trying to close it. I want them to have the answer. That's my comfort place, is when they've already got the answer and it's just for me to facilitate it.
It's definitely the sign of a professional. Definitely a sign of professional, because I'm of the opinion that we are guides. We only guide people to what they want and what they want to buy. And I think the way we guide people is through the questioning, the 3 deep questioning. You got to go deep with people. And I think that's the secret in any good salesperson, is that you have to go deep. Use the what, where, how questions. I personally don't use why. I think it's a little bit questioning. It kind of puts people on defense. So, okay,
Yep.
Great. Anybody got any questions? Kyle, thank you very much, man. This is just off the chart.
Do
Question.
you let them know ahead of time that it's going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours, just so they can time block? Okay.
Yep. Because what I also do too in that lead form is I'm getting all their contact information, the most accurate. example, Facebook lead comes in, it's going to be an old Facebook email address, right? So I'm always clarifying, hey, this is the email that I have. What's the best email that you use that you'll see pop up? So getting their email, but I'm sending them a calendar invite through their email as well. So we're attached to the, perfect, I'm going to send it so you don't forget it, because you don't want to hear, oh, I forgot it. So you're sending the email, whether it's a Zoom or it's a location, whatever it looks like in there. So they know the time frame that's in there. And if I don't have 2 hours, I'll let them know. Perfect. I can condense. We can talk about this. Yet I want to make sure as well, if it's got to be 2 that we do, I have to make sure the alignment's there. But 100%, I let them know how long it's going to be, and I'm ready to explain why, what we're covering.
Before you go into a house with them, do you let them know not to talk too much about, like you say, the offer and everything inside, because you might be being taped, or there might be.
Yeah, I tell them. I mean, yeah, yes and no, because I want them to feel comfortable when I'm asking them questions too, though, on that side, like the likes and dislikes and stuff like that. But in regards to the offers or everything else, I don't want any clues left behind on, because it's fine, the likes and dislikes, but clues on their willingness to make an offer, and they love it. They want this house over the other ones. If the seller hears that, then it's going to be tough negotiating, right? Or tougher. I love negotiating, but it'll be tougher to negotiate. So, yeah, I'll let them know ahead of time. Hey guys, once we go in here. And it's funny because I'll point out, little cameras that you see everywhere.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, I mean, again, going back to, you're the professional now. You told them it was going to be there, and all of a sudden here's a camera on top of the fridge and a random look, like it's good.
I had a little story about a camera. When you're talking about cameras, and it was my listing. An agent was in there doing an inspection for his client, and we got him rifling through drawers and pulling out papers and reading confidential papers, personal papers, not confidential, obviously, but personal papers of the listing agent. And his whole attitude changed all of a sudden when it came to that repair negotiation. And finally, my guy just got totally, he said, listen, I'm out to lunch with my wife. I'm going to email you. He emails me and pretty much says, send this directly to that agent. And it went back down through whatever he had to say to him. And then he said, listen, I've got you on camera going through my personal property. Now, how do you want to handle this? And within 3 minutes, the agent said, okay, we're ready to close. So that's what happens when you get on camera. I've had a few others. Kyle, what do you want to say? Now that I've asked you every question, what is the most important thing, or what do you want to share that you feel is one of the most important things that any buyer's agent should know or care about or should implement?
Interesting. I feel like there's so many. So this won't touch to it. However, I know I do gain trust in it because I mean it, because my mother made me give her a promise a while back. She was done wrong in real estate at one point, but I also put a cancellation guarantee in my agreement as well. Usually for the people I'm just meeting, but I love talking on it. Like, guys, here's a cancel. Like, if anything I've ever told you comes back that isn't what I promised, here's the cancellation agreement with my company. You don't have to tell me. All you have to do is shoot me a text, send me an email, make a phone call. I'd love to learn why, but you don't even have to share it. But this is in place for it. And I also tell them that I'll never say you have to buy this house. That was the promise I made to my mom, is I'll never say you have to buy this house. It's the hottest. I'm not the salesman on that side. And so I tell them, like, if you ever hear me say it, I want them to ensure that it's my job to get them the facts and the information, everything else. And for me to tell them to buy this house, like that's not my choice. It's their choice. It's my job to show them the information. And I think that goes so far with that cancellation agreement, and the me also sharing with them, like, if you hear me say any words like this, you can call me out, fire me at that time.
I love you, brother. I also have a cancellation agreement in mind, and it just says, hey, you want to fire me? Fire me. If I ever said anything negative or against you, told you the wrong thing, I won't do it, but you're still welcome to fire me. And I love that about you. Anything else?
I don't think so. I mean, Greg, I've got so many papers and talking points. Like I love this stuff. So literally, if y'all have any questions, like Greg knows, reach out to me, because I can go. I was laughing about it with Greg earlier. I was like, man, like you're gonna have to keep me on point, because I can talk about all this stuff and all this information that's been useful for me on it. Because I'm literally looking at like 8 pages of just like brief stuff that I have. So if you guys have any questions on anything, hopefully there was a nugget or two in there that you'll be able to use or go deeper on in your own business with it. It's given me the success that I needed for what I'm looking for. So it's been very helpful for me to put these things in place and to learn. Education, learn. DISC, take it.
I totally appreciate you coming on. And as we build this series of 8 interviews, I think it's real important that we're getting people that have the experience out there, that know the pitfalls of what happened. We're new agents at one time. We all did the wrong things, and in spite of ourselves, we still lasted a couple of more years. Anybody else got any questions? And this is the guy to ask them from. I'll tell you what, Kyle, how many homes did you sell in your biggest year? Buyer side.
Buy side was, I'm thinking it was 2000. I only worked half a year last year. So 2018, I think it was 34 buy side, I think.
34 buy sides alone. Okay. And the way you work 34 buy sides alone, and I'm sure Kyle, is you have to have a process. So figure out your process. What I love about where we work is we do have collaboration as one of our values. So reach out, make sure you get them. Anybody got any questions for me?
Yeah,
Okay,
Greg,
next week, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just send them my contact, whether you guys need it or not. Greg, will you send them my contact information in an email?
So
Just
what is it, Kyle Walker?
I'm being serious, y'all. Just shoot me a text, give me a phone call, set up a time. Like I'm more than happy to meet with anybody and talk about anything, because I again, teacher background. It's in my blood. So I want to help whoever I can. That wants to be open to ideas and strategies and.
Cool. And he will. So what is it, Kyle? Kyle Walker at KW or?
I think the better one, KyleWalker.realty@gmail is fine.
Not realty
Mm-hmm.
at gmail.com. Look at that. I'm actually typing stuff.
I'll throw 'em.
in the chat.
I'll give you my phone number too, Greg, so they can shoot a text.
Go ahead.
843-864-6921.
Okay, it's in the chat room right there. You can copy it off.
Thanks, Greg.
Um,
I could have done that.
Thank you, Kyle. I totally appreciate you coming, losing your boat ride for the day. Next week, we're going to be talking to Desiree Maurer. If you know Desiree's business is all about referrals, how she gets them, where she gets them from, and most importantly, they're about agent referrals. Other agents giving her deals and going, here, take it. What better way can you lead generate than through other agents that are not in your market? So 1 o'clock, do me a favor, share, like, post. I'm actually getting that whole Canva thing down. Put out a couple of cute ads, man. Even put Kyle's face on one.
Man,
20 years ago.
you and tech, Greg. You need to teach
Yeah.
me.
Me and tech. Yeah. Oil and vinegar, oil and water, whatever that thing is. Vinegar and water. What do we do there? All right, guys. Thanks for coming through. Any questions? Drop me a line. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
y'all.